Okay, so how do we fix climate change? That's actually a really interesting question, and I just wanted to give my opinion about it. Um, if you don't know, I'm actually a very political person. I think that's because, okay, so this 10th grade year, life has been so incredibly perfect, and just one of my philosophies of making the best use of my time is boredom is okay, and it's good to be bored. And it's bad to be on social media when you're bored because that eats away at that boredom, and doesn't really give anything back to you. So boredom is really is good because it allows me to think, and that sparks creativity, and it allows me to really sit down and think about my situation, think about what I want to do. It allows me to creative. It's the source of the majority of my game ideas, my project ideas, etc. And I'd say 50% of my boredom is me being creative because when you have nothing to do in the physical world, you go to what you can do in the conscious world, um, in the non-physical world, and you go to creativity in your brain. All you have left to do is play with the ideas in your brain, and that's where 50% of my boredom goes to being creative and trying to find new ideas. The other 50% is usually dedicated to me trying to play politics through my head, playing out different scenarios and trying to constantly negate all of my ideas and come up with better political ideas. I think politics is one of the most important things in the world because it dictates the direction that society goes towards, right? So okay, so global warming is the most important one. So I'm never going to talk about politics on this channel specifically, or if I have, then my apologies. I never want to talk about politics on this channel. This is not a political channel. It's strictly for coding. But climate change is a political issue, even though in my opinion, it should not be a political issue. It should be a human issue, which it is, but it's become a political issue, and I don't think that's right because it is not an issue as to how we are governed. Politics is mainly how people are governed, and climate change is more a issue of does humanity exist in the future or not? So here's the thing about climate change. How do we solve it? And the reason why I'm going to post this on my channel is because I've actually considered dropping my coding career and doing research on chemistry, physics, and I was interested in how fusion reactors work. I think they are really incredibly cool. I mean, harnessing the power of the sun. I love Marvel. You probably do know that if you know me at all. I am a complete Marvel fanboy, right? And I think, having an Iron Man Stark reactor, that's essentially what a fusion reactor is, just a bigger version of it. I think having an Iron Man Stark reactor is sick, having our own mini sun, right? So so the whole point of that is to say, like, the reason I'm posting this is because it's an idea that I think about a lot. I wanted to share with you guys, and um it's important because I considered it as a career choice. It shows what I am interested in. And what I am interested in is solving climate change, right? Now, here's the thing about here's the misconception about climate change. All of these activists say, oh, we need to switch to renewables. Some people say, oh, it doesn't exist. Well, the bottom line is it does exist. If you don't think it exists, I'm sorry, but you're a little slow. And here I'm going to prove it. It's actually really simple, right? When you burn a log, right? When you burn wood, right? It produces smoke, and that smoke is carbon, right? You're throwing carbon in the air. So when you stick your hand in that fire, it's going to be hot, right? And carbon is, oh, guess what? It traps heat. Right? You burn wood, it produces carbon. Carbon traps heat. Climate change exists because the carbon, and I'm not going to get into the methane, but the carbon um, is produced into the air. Now, what does the sun do? Well, the sun heats up the earth, right? It heats up the earth so that it's warm. Now, what happens is the sun heats up the earth, and then it eventually cools down. And then we have a nice and simple earth that can sustain life. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, because the sun heats it up, keeping us warm, but it also cools down so that we don't burn, right? What carbon is, well, it's in the air. When you burn wood, the carbon is released into the air, and the sun that's heating up the earth, it's no longer cooling down because carbon traps heat, and therefore the carbon in the air is trapping the heat from the sun that would normally dissipate. But it's not. That's climate change in a nutshell. It's not that difficult to understand. Carbon, we burn wood, carbon gets released, carbon traps heat, sun heats up planet, the heat no longer dissipates because the carbon traps the heat. Therefore, the globe is warming. Okay, so what is the solution? Now, the solution is actually we don't have a solution. We don't have a fucking solution. People are saying switch to renewables. I don't think that's gonna work. Jordan Peterson had a good skit on this. I'm not a conservative. Let me just make that clear. I will never vote Republican unless something drastic happens. In my opinion, politics, the whole political United States system should be completely reworked. I think we should fire every single government official, good or bad. Just give us a clean slate, right? But anyways, Jordan Peterson's a conservative Canadian psychologist, and so I didn't agree with much of what he said when he talked about climate change. Um, well, I agreed with half of it. I agreed with the other half. I less agreed with his ideas and more like where his ideas were coming from. So his ideas were like, okay, well, let's let climate change happen because we don't have a solution. Let's let climate change happen, and hopefully people will start to care about the environment because it's getting worse, and therefore we'll fix it. Because not enough people care about it. So I agree with the idea that not enough people care about it. I agree with the idea that we don't have a solution. But I don't agree with the idea of let's let it get worse so that we can realize that it's bad. That's the part uh, I don't agree with. So, but what can we do with the idea that I do agree with? Well, here's the thing. He's right. We do not have a solution to climate change. Renewables don't work. They are a short-term solution because, and I actually did a whole paper on this. I just remembered I did a whole paper on this very specific issue. Let's see, Fusion, Google Docs. Let's see, Fusion. Yes, here it is. I did a paper for science on this. Um, for chemistry. But essentially, in a nutshell, it's we do not have a solution to climate change. The solution that people are all pointing towards and trying to implement is like solar panels and wind things, right? Turbines. Now here's the problem with those. You're essentially harnessing the power. You're basically piggyback riding on nature's energy, right? Now that has its own problems, but the main problem is, well, we can't control it. So what happens when we can't control it? Well, solar panels, it collects power from the sun. What happens when the sun goes down? And this is a point that Jordan Peterson made. He said, okay, well, what happens when the sun goes down? Well, we don't have any more power. And so the solution that people have is, oh, well, why don't we store the power? Well, that's actually the problem that's the main problem that people don't seem to see, in my opinion. It's that they don't realize that we can't store that power. That's because of a number of factors that has to do with our current technology. Like we do not have the technology to store it. Resources, we'd have to create a bunch of physical batteries, and that's a big resource hungry task, right? So we can't store the power. So I see only two paths from there. One is we keep going with renewables and we focus on technology that's supposed to revolutionize the battery, and through these new batteries, and actually I heard China created a new battery. They're like called the Blade batteries or something. But if we can make a battery that is extremely efficient, and less resource hungry, basically extremely easy to create batteries that store a lot of energy. If we can do that, then we can store the energy from things like solar panels, and then we'll have a sustainable society with renewable energy with stuff like solar panels and wind turbines. Now, the other path I see is using these current technologies, such as solar panels. However, we don't use them permanently. They are not a permanent solution. And this is the path I would take, because it's the most reliable path, right? And I'll explain that in a minute. But essentially, we use these solar panels, wind turbines, water turbines, whatever the hell they are, and we use them as a bridge to this new technology called fusion, right? So essentially what we do is we kind of start implementing these solar panels, wind turbines, etc. Um, as like a temporary fix so that we can kind of slow down climate change until we figure out fusion. Because fusion, essentially what it is it's fusing two hydrogen molecules together, right? And that creates a ton of energy. Now I'm not going to go into the science, but I do understand the science. It's like all of the atoms have potential energy, and you know how atoms like don't touch? Well, if you can force them together, well, that'll create a lot of energy. And essentially we've created reactors that are way hotter than the sun. And we keep these molecules floating in midair with magnets, and the main shape that we've taken up is called the tokamak, I believe. I mean, it's like a donut shaped, and the energy is spinning inside of the magnetic donut, right? The tokamak. But essentially, that produces a ton of energy, right? And all we need to fuel it is water, right? A water-fueled reactor that produces as much energy as like that as or more energy than anything else on Earth, right? We are literally harnessing the power of the sun, right? And that would be revolutionary. That would be insane, right? So right now we're on track to not have that by 2030, or scientists predict not even by 2040. Who knows? I don't really care. But I think the main thing is that it's better than solar panels and wind turbines, because we are no longer dependent on nature. We are dependent on our own ability to figure out a way to make this. And we are doing that right now. Um, but essentially, we are less reliant on nature. That's the main thing. Um, so here's the thing. We do not have a solution to climate change. We have already tried to implement solar panels and wind turbines to make cities, to make places, have sustainable energy and not burn any coal. But I think that's not going to work. My solution, the path I would take, is fusion, right? Because we are already developing fusion. And so what I'd say, this has nothing to do with like, policies or anything. All my suggestion is reroute some of the tax income to projects like ITER, EITER. That's a joint international program that's developing fusion right now. Redirect money into these scientific studies, and hopefully that will allow us to hire more people, etc., and hopefully get fusion quicker. And that will solve our problem almost instantaneously. Well, not really, but we're gonna have to build more reactors. But it will be a lot faster than trying to implement solar panels everywhere, because solar panels take up a lot of space and don't produce that much energy. It's just harder. So here's the thing. Yes, keep implementing solar panels, renewable energy sources like solar panels, wind turbines for now. But the main action we have to take is start rerouting money into the research for fusion reactors, because if humanity is going to have a future, fusion is the only way to have a sustainable energy source, right? That is the only way I can see viable for a sustainable energy source. Right, and fusion is much safer than fission, right? That's another pro. So yeah. Um, so that's the bottom line. Reroute money into ITER, projects like ITER. Develop fusion reactors as quickly as possible. Start making them as quickly as possible. And then we don't have to rely on nature and solar panels, which are big, clunky, and resource hungry, and all that. Now we can just have like this sun just sitting on our Earth, a safe sun on our Earth that's infinitely powering us. All it takes is water, and we can get, I think it was like deuterium or something from the sea. So, that that solves our rising sea levels, right? And just, get some water from the sea, pour it into the reactor. And I understand it's a lot more complicated than that, but yeah, reroute money into fusion research, create a fusion reactor as quickly as possible, start powering the nation with it. Because the truth is that we do not have a solution. So, my solution, let's create a solution. Thank you all for watching. That's it. Uh, I think it's an interesting topic, and it's an interesting stance that I don't see many people looking at. I don't see many people looking at it at this point of view. Um, and on the plus side, I think cheaper energy, I think that'll be better for our economy. That'll boost technological innovation. Um, but yeah, I don't see many people taking this stance, and I thought, this is my stance. It'd be interesting to put it out there. All right. All right. Thank you. See ya.